Trade reports are escalating as the possible Bills trade target has been revealed. As he enters his fifth season with the team, analysts have mentioned defensive end AJ Epenesa as a player who the Bills could be looking to trade. My name is Maeve Miller, and I'm a part of the Bills Digest team, so please subscribe to the Bills Digest YouTube channel for all the latest updates during this offseason. Starting off with his career with the Bills, Epenesa was drafted in 2020 from the Iowa Hawkeyes, and as a fellow Hawkeye myself, he's one of my favorite players, but not just because of his school. He had a little bit of a transition into the NFL, but quickly turned into a very explosive player. He really utilizes his size and his strength, and he's just very reliable on defense. He's good at collapsing pockets, and he's just one of those players when he's out in the field, I can really trust him. He's very good at getting up in quarterbacks' faces, like you see him putting a lot of pressure on Aaron Rodgers, and notably against the Chiefs a couple of years ago, you can see Epenesa is the one with his hands up. He ends up deflecting a pass from Patrick Mahomes and catching it for an interception. And in any game, that's a great play, but especially against the Chiefs, we know every play is so important, and that's just the kind of player he is. He's more of a situational pass rusher and doesn't come in every game or every play, but when he does, he really makes an impact. And I think that's why I trust him when I'm watching. His teammates have a lot of trust, and he just brings really good energy into the locker room. His stats have also been very good over the years. Like I said, in 2020 was when he was drafted, and since then he's played in 75 games with 64 tackles, 39 assists, and 21 and a half sacks. And he's actually coming off one of his best seasons. He tied his second best record for sacks, which is with 6, and then had a career high of 39 sacks. So you might be asking, why are the Bills potentially thinking about trading him or not? And this came from a Fox analyst named Ralph Facciano, and he was the one that kind of brought up this idea. So nothing is confirmed, but he said he's in the last year of a 2-year, $12 million contract extension, but he just watched as his team signed Joey Bosa to a 1-year, $12.6 million contract and gave Greg Rousseau a 4-year, $80 million extension. The Bills aren't willing to commit big money to Epenesa, too. Maybe one of the many teams in need of an edge rusher would be interested in his 6 sacks per year. It helps that there are a lot of good edge rushers in this draft in case the Bills want an immediate replacement. This definitely brings up a lot of good points because the Bills have been shelling out big money for their defense, and Epenesa, I'm not sure if there's money for him or if they're willing to invest in him in the long run. And there are teams like the Commanders and the Saints that are looking for his position. However, since I stated my love for Epenesa, I really don't want them to trade him. I think it makes more sense to keep a veteran who has played with the Bills and knows McDermott's style of defense than getting an immediate replacement in the draft. But he is in the final year, so that'll be something interesting to see. Speaking of those players, I want to talk about how Epenesa compares to other defensive players. Starting with Joey Bosa, he is just an incredible player. He's a defensive powerhouse and known very well in the league. And the Bills definitely have made some changes regarding him. They cut Von Miller's been on the team for a couple of years and then signed Joey Bosa to a 1-year deal. And I think it's very exciting because Von Miller, he was kind of in a decline. He did face some issues on the field and in his personal life that just kind of put a stain on the Bills. He also was coming off of a ACL injury, and he's in his mid-30s, so that's a hard injury to come back. Regardless, when you're at that age and playing such a tough position, it's very hard to come back from. And I think he kind of lost a little bit of that energy. That's why bringing in a new player like Bosa, he'll bring it. He did very well in the Chargers. There's instances against the Bills where he sacked Josh Allen. Allen got hurt on that play, and then Nathan Peterman came in the backup, and then Bosa sacked him again. So he's just such a good player, and even Allen's mentioned that we'd rather have him on our team than going against him. So I think it's a really exciting change. But him and Epenesa are definitely different style players. As I mentioned earlier, Epenesa kind of uses that brute strength and size to really fight his way through there, whereas Bosa just seems like very natural. He has like that kind of finesse and athleticism, and he also would most likely play in every snap, as opposed to Epenesa, who rotates in and out. But I also like that move Epenesa doing that because it keeps the defense fresh, and I think he can really try to fight for a spot out there. A big issue with Bosa, though, is the injuries. That's one of the reasons why I think it'd be hard to trade Epenesa away. I know Bosa's only in a 1-year contract, but if they were to continue signing him, and then the Bills were to trade Epenesa, they wouldn't have a strong backup for Bosa if he were to get injured. And throughout his career, he's just been plagued with injuries, even though he's a very good player. And I think it'd be tough to not have a more of a veteran replacement for him who has game time experience with the Bills. So that's one of my biggest concerns about that. But I like the move regardless. Next, I want to talk about Greg Rousseau, who's also one of my favorite players. I just think he's 6'6". He's kind of like a freak of nature out there. His arms extend, feels like halfway across the field, and he's really good at like blocking his passing lanes, sliding down balls, and he's just like even Epenesa, I trust. Rousseau, I trust even more. I think he's one of the best defenders they have, and this $80 million contract extension was a great idea because there was talk over the Bills extending Rousseau versus Benford versus Cook, what they had money for, but I think this was a great move. We want to have him for the next couple of years. He's a player in his prime, and he also has different style of play from Epenesa. Him and Bosa would most likely play opposite of one another, and with Epenesa coming in and rotating, I think that'd be a really good idea. Keeps it fresh while having, 3 very strong players. That's what's exciting, is that this upcoming season, either way, we'll have all 3 players if they remain healthy. And I think our defense is something that had a little bit of struggles in the past. And I think adding Bosa and extending these contracts is something that'll put them in a really good direction. So I'm definitely excited to see how that goes because our offense is already very strong. And with a little tweaks to the defense, I think it could be really cool to see what happens. But there were some people that were talking about Epenesa on Twitter, and this guy said, I think AJ Epenesa might be the odd man out. Save some cap and bring in a guy that can defend the run at a better rate. You can draft or see what's available as free agency progresses. For his money, need more. This is interesting because it says save some cap, but Epenesa was on a 2-year, $12 million contract, so it wasn't like he was breaking the bank in that way. But I think the second part of the statement where he says bring in a guy that can defend the run at a better rate definitely brings up a really good point because the Bills have struggled with that. Players like Derrick Henry have blown by us and just make our defense look really poor. But they're already working towards that with bringing Bosa in, who's very good at stopping the run and stopping players on the edge. So I don't necessarily disagree that it'd be better to bring in a player that would be better at that role, but we kind of already did. And then he says you can draft, but as I mentioned earlier, I think it just makes more sense to me to keep a player that's been on the team for a couple of years that knows the style and knows the teammates than just bringing in someone new from the draft. So I think we'll have to see what happens when it comes to that. The draft is in a little bit less than 10 days, and the Bills are definitely making some defensive changes. They're definitely looking for a cornerback. There's been talk about a defensive tackle, but it'll be interesting to see if they do bring in a new defensive end and what they end up doing with Epenesa in the future. Thank you for watching, and go Bills.